How did a bunch of peasants and slaves overthrow a 10,000-year-old empire of dragon riders? We're soon going to start covering the next book in the chronology of Elric, the Weird of the White Wolf. A lot of you that have followed the short form video format have noticed I did skip over the Fortress of the Pearl, and there are two main reasons for that. First, we will be sticking with the publication chronological order, and second, the Fortress of the Pearl is incredibly dense, deeply philosophical, and I would really like to get its dedicated moment. So before we join Elric in the Weird of the White Wolf, let's dive into the Young Kingdoms and get more familiar with the many nations that the Dreaming City have subjugated. For 10 millennia, the Bright Empire ruled the world with absolute cruelty and authority. They maintained control by taking advantages of three principles: their natural command of sorcery, their dark alliance with the Lords of Chaos, and their vast army of dragons whose breath melts stone. But Melnibonéans have grown decadent. Around 8,000 years into their reign, the Melnibonéans have begun to stagnate. They had conquered everything worth conquering and learned everything they could ever care to learn. What gave the humans an opportunity to break free from their chain is that Melnibonéans cared very little about governing the vast empire and remained mainly isolated in Emrer, the Dreaming City. The emperors that ruled Melniboné in the last 2,000 years became obsessed with exotic drugs and perverse arts. Some of their subjects even spent years in magically induced slumbers. The control of their influence wasn't helped with the time it took their dragons to recover, which meant that they couldn't exercise their cruelty across the globe as effortlessly as their ancestors did. Melniboné's grip loosened, and vassal states and slave population realized the cruel gaze of their conquerors is not as focused as it once was. Over the coming centuries, rebellions sparked all over, but the dragon riders didn't care to put them out. Some of those resulted in subjects being able to break away and establish their own independent nations. The arrogant Melnibonéans dubbed them the Young Kingdoms. The efforts to establish those independent nations were brutal, and around 2,000 years before Elric sat on the Ruby Throne, the Empire of Quarzhasaat attempted to challenge Melniboné directly. The Dragon Riders responded by swiftly sending a magical deluge of sand, turning their lush green fields into a desert to serve as a permanent warning to all those who thought they could challenge their mind. Centuries later, when Elric assigns Yurkun as regent to the Ruby Throne to go exploring, he stumbled at the gates of Quarzhasaat. Frail, weak, and looking more akin to a vagabond than a legendary dragon prince. A local nobleman blackmails Elric into retrieving a mythical artifact known as the Pearl, located at the heart of the world. An epic test of his willpower, but a prime example of human arrogance, which we will cover another day. But brazen challenges like that of the people of Quarzhasaat wasn't how humans truly gained independence. They had to learn how to be subtle and to essentially test the patience of the Dragon Riders, something we will call the Silent War. They started by gradually hoarding all tributes to the Dragon Isles, and when Melnibonéans didn't bother to sail out to collect them, they used the wealth to build out their own infrastructure. They began by establishing sea routes that will circumvent the once cruel, now indifferent eyes of Ymir. Their wealth allowed for building out a bigger and stronger naval power, which would vastly outnumber the fearsome golden battle barges of Melniboné, and by the time Elric is crowned the 428th Emperor of Melniboné, the human warships have far surpassed the Melnibonéan fleet. However, humanity had yet another massive advantage. The metaphysical laws of the universe were changing. 1,000 years ago, Melniboné fought a brutal war against the beast folk of Dartzi. It was a perfect victory for Melniboné, and it exhausted many of their resources, and signaled a gradual lessening of the overall power that Chaos had over the world. At the same time, humanity began worshipping the White Lords of Law. What is very crucial to understand here about the world entirely is that this wasn't a simple shift in religion, it is a literal, physical transformation of the planet itself. Law represents physical structure, while chaos is raw, unshaped matter. Under Melniboné's rule, the world wasn't fully developed. The borders of the maps dissolve into a churning formless soup of chaos. This part of the world is known as the Edge of the World. And here comes Earl Aubec of Malador, our Mirian, a human champion of law. Aubec marched into a wild, swirling mist of unknown, and with every downward slash of his sword, he carved a valley. With every upward swing, he throws up a mountain. A sweeping arc flattens out an entire field. And with that, humanity simply didn't steal the world from the Dragon Lords. They carved their own continents into existence to build out their young kingdom. Warmir was the first human kingdom to successfully declare independence from Melniboné, around 400 years ago, and more followed, but some did not survive. New ones sprung up from their bones. As weakened as Melniboné is, they still remain a lucrative destination for trade. But the pace at which the human nations developed threatened even that. We have a great foundational knowledge of the world now, and in our next video, we will be diving much deeper into Warmir and the other young kingdoms. We will explore unique cultures, militaries, and how they all interact with one another in this brave, new cutthroat world that is the Young Kingdoms. Make sure you subscribe to explore the rest of Moorcock's world with me, and be aware the journey will be long and perilous, and I'll be glad to have you with me.